Hi there, Dimensional Sight, back with another video. And in today's video, we are going to look at the Sphinx structure, and we're going to talk about it, analyze it, and we're going to look at a little bit of the mythology involved and why I believe that this Sphinx structure was a much more prevalent thing than what it is today. And was used quite a bit in the past to represent something that I'm not quite sure. I haven't figured it all out or anything, but that's what we're gonna. That's why we're going on this adventure together. Okay, so this is a modern day image of the Sphinx and how it looks. What you'll notice is uh, it has been added to, it has been repaired a lot. So you're going to see a lot of the older images. But I just wanted to start with this one just to kind of get an idea of what you'll see nowadays. Also, just to see the scale of what a normal sized human being looks like compared to it. And then we're going to come back to this image at the end and talk about it again. Okay, so let's go to some of the older images. So I really liked looking at these because this gives you an idea of what it was like before it was even, before the paws were even dug out or anything. Um, you definitely see these lines that go across the neck and swirl around the neck in like a circular pattern, it seems like. The headdress was like in line with the chin. That's basically where the headdress ended, it appears. It doesn't look like the headdress really was supposed to continue on. Um, so that's one of the things I noticed is that it seems like they're maybe trying to change people's perception of what this headdress really looked like when it was originally created. Um, and the first thing I thought of when I saw this image right here was that this thing was swiped right across uh, a huge gouge out of the head. Another gouge here, almost like a giant claw would have just gone swipe right across the face. Took a huge gouge out of the head when it did that, and then also made these giant scratches all the way across the face. So that was like one of my first original ideas I had when I first looked at it. Also, if you haven't watched Wise Up's video called "Do You See What I See?" He made a video about the Sphinx and some of his theories on it. And one of the things he talks about is right here where the nose is missing. There is a cavity right there, and um, if you were creating a sculpture like this, there is no way you would create it with a sinus cavity like this. It was his point. Um, we're going to talk more about that. I'm not 100%, and he was saying this is a real skull, a real giant Nephilim, like giant skull or head inside of the Sphinx. And I'm not again not 100% on that, but I'm definitely leaning towards that, and I'll show you why. But there's also some evidence that's going to contradict that, so we're going to look at that as well, and we'll try to get closer to the truth. But it appears to be hollow, so I mean I guess that's as much as we can tell from that. What I will say, and this was the conclusion I came to after looking at this for quite a bit, is I do believe that this was a mask. If we are going to go with the theory that there's a real giant Nephilim skull inside the Sphinx, um, I believe that there was a mask placed over the entire. So this not only this entire headdress, but basically over the face as well is actually covered by a mask. And I'll show you some other pictures that are going to support that evidence. And that what you're seeing here is where the actual mud fossil is underneath what I believe was once a metal headpiece and mask, full face mask, um, with the eyes being exposed, the nose missing, but probably was originally covered with maybe a nose hole to breathe. The mouth is questionable. I'm not really sure about the mouth. We're going to look at that more because that's where a lot of the contradicting evidence comes from, is the mouth area. So we'll talk about that a lot, or we'll look at that. The ears, and then the other thing that immediately came to mind when I saw this image was that what this headdress does is it allows you to hear really, really good. So when you put this headdress on, it amplifies your ability to hear, very obviously. That's just what it does. It's almost like a piece of technology, um, you know. So and there you can see the scale of the people, and you can see the state of what that pyramid looked like right there. And is there anything else really to note? At this time, even back then, there was already, obviously the nose was broken off. The headpiece up here, we don't know. Obviously the Egyptian pharaohs' masks and whatnot show like a snake, or they'll sometimes show the head of a bird up here, but we don't know what was up here because it's been missing. In all the old photos, it never had that on there, so we don't know what was actually originally there, because we just cannot trust the historians at all, as we know. Okay, we're going to go to the next picture. This is a much more modern picture. As you can see, they put all the support underneath the headdress so that it would not crumble. They did a ton of plaster work and repair. They filled in the big huge missing piece in the head, as well as all the other missing pieces on the headdress. However, I will say they seem to have preserved quite a bit. When you look at the eye piece over here, how this is kind of, the mask is broken off and it's missing part, that's always been that way. And they didn't really fill it in. They didn't, repair that, which is good. I'm glad they didn't do they didn't try to fully repair this cavity and all that kind of stuff. The ears appear to be fairly untouched, which is good. And I do believe that if we're going to go with a mud fossil head, that this would have been actually the real ear right here that we're looking at. I was debating whether this ridge would have been the metal part, a metal piece of the headdress, or part of the ear, and I'm going with that's actually would have been flesh right there. That would have been real ear. And it sticks out. See, so the metal, and we'll see a side view where the ear sticks out from the headdress, and the headdress would have had to have been removed. It potentially folds out and then goes up to take it off. This could have also been only a burial mask, not used for everyday use, but that wouldn't make sense with the ears, because I believe there's utility. This was actually used as a working mask, but with the ears giving you the extended hearing. And the thing that's weird about, the thing that makes me think that this, well, okay, there's a couple things here. So we see the level of the repairs. We can see what level here is on this image. It's these lines right here. This line right here where the repairs were done, this is your level. This is your flat ground level that you can go off of. So this line that goes across the mouth is not level. It is off level, as well as the one above it. But when I was looking at it, and there's another image that we're going to see, it appears as though these potentially were the layers that this statue was built in. If this is in fact all concrete, and that this was in fact a hollow head that was just built completely, never was alive, that this was always just a statue only, then it would make sense that we see these layers that have crumbled away, and then we see this like almost rebar structure inside where the layers, except it's off level, which is strange, which is the weird part. Okay, let's go to the next image. This is a more modern image, but you're gonna kind of gonna actually see what I was talking about, where we see the layers here, and they seem to be quite level on this image. In the other image, was when you look from the front, it appears to be off kilter a little bit. Now, on this image, you're going to see support for the idea that this was in fact a metal mask that was turned into stone through the process of fossilization or mud fossilization, which I don't know what that exactly entailed, turning metal into stone, but that's what I'm seeing. And you can see where the mask went down. So this, you can see this was the real flesh and blood ear. The metal mask, basically, and this mask would have been custom made for this guy's face. It fits around all the contours just perfectly. So this was a custom made mask. And then it goes down, and then this is where the real flesh and blood mud fossil is, and here's where the actual mask line is, right here, and it comes down around the chin, and I believe underneath the chin looks exposed as, you know, again, his under chin maybe would have been exposed. And then the other interesting thing is that when we see these lines that go across the mouth, now the other idea was that this line is only the structure of the mask, and that the skull and the real skull underneath was not obviously built in a layer like this. Like this mask would have only been built in the layer, and that's why it looks that way, like it was poured concrete in layers. It's a pretty tricky one. I mean, this is kind of a tricky one. And then this thing here over is interesting to me because this is, I mean, they were digging in this thing's neck right here, trying to, or its jaw area or something. They were trying to. You can see how it's hollow though there too. Looks like behind that rock inside, and then the ear very much looks. Again, it's got that almost skin look to it. The rock does, very mud fossil-y. Okay, let's go to the next image. Alright, here's an older one. Now the first thing I want you to notice right away is how the head is a different color from the body. So the body is not a mud fossil, okay? It's definitely not. You'll see in the different images that this is a built thing. And then the head is placed on top. And I believe that what we see here with these lines that wrap around the neck, this is how the head was attached. So they like stuck the head on this thing, and then they wrapped, I think, this stuff around it to hold it in place. And this maybe was like a plaster type of process, like a, you know, where you would take a cloth, or I don't know, and then you wrap it in like and then you just wrap it around, and then you let it dry. But definitely an obvious difference in color, you know, between the two. And then also you see the difference in color between what I was saying was the mask, the delineation between the mask and the skin there. And see, that's how you would have been able to slip this thing on and off. Because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to really get your ear in and out very well. Now the interesting thing that you'll see is that, again, you see this, what I'll call a structural element in the mouth area, and it appears as though if this was a mask, you would have had no hole here for your mouth. So it's, you know, which is weird. And then you can see the line continues to what we'll call the skin of the mud fossil. So that kind of supports that this whole thing was just always a statue. So it's weird. It's really, really weird. But this is a good image right here. And there's a couple other just interesting little things. We'll look at this and we'll analyze on the Sphinx. I like this image a lot because it gives us a lot of good data. So in this image, you've got the boy, and he just looks, he's got a smile on his face. This just makes me happy when I see him, because he looks like he's happy in this picture, and that makes me happy. And he's got his camel. It looks like a nice camel. Well taken care of. You can see everything's very tidy on it. Um, you got this guy over here. Now, the interesting thing about these two people, this guy, I can make out some kind of, I believe, sandals on his feet. And I do believe that's a man right there. And then over here, I'm getting also a manly vibe from this, but also somewhat of a female vibe from the head. The head is weird. I can't really make out what its head looks like, this person. Strange. And then this person appears to be barefoot, but I mean, it's hard. I guess I can't see for sure, but I'm not seeing footwear on that person, and that's just weird because if you're out in the hot desert, how do you not have shoes on? I just thought that was odd when I saw that, but some other interesting things about this particular image that gives us a lot of information. We can see that as it was being dug out, um, there were clearly already bricks around the paws, so we can say that this was not a hoax in terms of them putting bricks after the fact. It appears as though that as they were digging it out, that there really were bricks, and you can see that evidence here too, as you can still see the bricks underneath all of the dirt over here. You can see the bricks still inside over here. And over here, etc. So that's interesting. Is that there's a brick layer that goes on the outside of another layer underneath, and then also you can see that there were bricks over here. So at one time, appears as though this whole thing would have been bricked on the outside, going all the way up to the neck and even above the neck. So that's what it appears like. The other interesting thing is you'll notice these lines that go down. That's definitely looking like a structural element of the way it was built. You'll see the very perpendicular level lines across, including this line right here, which is definitely, and then it goes at a 90-degree angle right there. So you can see the sections that this thing was actually constructed in here. Right here, there's a perfectly straight line. Then you go down here, and the next layer down appears to be this line right here. Or actually, sorry, this line right here. And then the layers appear to get bigger as they go down, slightly larger. And we're going to see another image. The other interesting thing on this image, this also shows the I'm going to call it a lingam, actually, guys. This looks like a lingam in between the paws of the Sphinx. So that was always there, as you can see from this image. Also, very, very interesting, fingernails on the paws. Now this is the weird thing. This paw, now we can't see this one because it's buried. This one has a fingernail. This one does not, which is so strange. This one has a fingernail. Okay. Come over here. This one does not have a fingernail. However, look at the exact spot where the other fingernail is located on its symmetrical partner over here. Does that not look like that's where the fingernail would go? Still has its brick layer, maybe, over top the fingernail? Is there a fingernail beneath this brick layer? What's going on with the fingernails, guys? I think I've never seen anyone else talk about this before, so I think I might be the first person, at least on YouTube, that's talking about this. Pretty weird. You're going to see why when we get to some more images. Alright, let's go to the next one. Alright, this is a good image because it gives us a lot of information. However, I'm kind of questionable about this image because I don't know if it's been tampered with or what. First things first, it's old, so that's good. It gives us data from the past before things were scrubbed, potentially. Although this image may have already been scrubbed, but this is the data that this gives us is. We see the swirls around the neck. We also see how the swirls then come down. Okay, after they kind of swirl around the neck and then come down. Also, we can see the pieces, uh, the the sections. Here's another section right here. So this was built in sections. Okay, very important. Nowadays, this has all been plastered in as one. They don't show you the sections that this was built in. And you know what's weird? This reminds me of a chess piece right here. It probably means nothing, but for some reason, that just popped into my head when I was looking at this one was chess piece. So, could mean nothing, could be something. This image gives us data because this to me shows how this could have just been potentially have been built in these layers. As you can see, the layer that goes through the mouth is contiguous all the way through the headpiece. Same thing back here. Contiguous lines going from the face mask to the back of the headpiece. Now again, if this whole thing was just a mask, then this only proves construction. But as we saw in the other images, even on where what we would call the mud fossil, there was a line. And I believe even on the ear here, we see a line going through the ear as well. So it's, again, leaning more towards that this was just constructed only as a statue. At least if you're going in that, this is your evidence. This is some of your strongest evidence right here. If you're going with that theory. Okay. So also I noticed on this one, and I bet you don't see these nowadays, and actually you don't because I looked at the newer images. You do not see any of this anymore. There were like images on the side here. I can't really make them out that much, but you can definitely see. So check out the circular pattern that you see. There were like hieroglyphs or something on here because you can actually see over here. You can kind of see that there was drawings or something. But look at the very circular, and then up here you kind of see a side of a circle as well. Let me see if I can kind of bring that out a little more for us. Might be able to. Actually, right there you can kind of. Actually, over here too, you kind of see it. There's something. It's like a disc shape with a lot of. I don't know. Hieroglyphs or something. Okay. Let's go to the next image. Okay, another old one. Again, just gives us some confirmation, gives us an angle to look at at it from. You'll notice too with the mask on top, there you can see the difference between what's underneath and then the mask layer. So you can see right there, and then also right here where it's broken. And you can see too the eyebrows themselves. The mask had the eyebrows built in, these smooth. So the mask itself went over the eyebrow. It didn't cover the eye though, obviously. Okay. Whoops. Might have jumped. Let's see. Nope. That's what I wanted. Okay. This was a World War I believe, picture. It's actually kind of fun just to look at all these guys and what they look like and what they're doing and stuff. I was doing that for a little bit. But this is a real nice high def old picture right here. really gives you a good close-up of the mask, eye, nose area. Um, like I was saying, you can see where the difference between the underlayer and the overlayer of the mask. Uh, and just kind of the difference in the surface of this versus this. So you can see how this is much more porous, um, meaning very likely much more biological. This being made of metal, much less porous. Wiseup talks about this being an arrow stuck through the head of the mud fossil giant. It's possible. I'm not 100% on that. I looked at this from many different angles, and what I've concluded is that it is possible. He might be right about it being an actual arrow being stuck through the top of the skull and down through the nose area, but it also appears as though it could have been part of the mask that's just bent, or or it was kind of the structure, like the cartilage piece that was holding the nose onto the face, that's been taken off. So it doesn't matter much to me whether or not that really was an arrow or not. There's so much other evidence to support that that this is a real mud fossil skull. So, and then this too gives you the image. So again, with the mouth, you see the structural element that goes through the mouth, and you do actually see it on what you would, or is this just a strap that holds it onto the face? Okay. All right, let's go to the next image. So here's the modern look at the Sphinx, and as you can see, all of the fingernails are gone, or claw nails, whatever you want to call it. So, wonder why that would be. They went to the trouble to, leave some of the other stuff alone. Why would you not want to have those fingernails showing? I believe there must be I think there's a reason for that. They don't want us to know for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it's weird. And then here, like I said, between the paws, you've got this ligament. As we saw in the old photos, this is original, right here. Also, the bump in the chest is kind of interesting. Not exactly sure why it has that. Okay, let's go to the next image. This was actually I found while I was digging deep on Start Page to get all of these Sphinx images, this one popped up, and it said it was from Jerusalem, from the 1800s, and I cannot find any other information on this picture. And I've just searched up and down, like Sphinx Jerusalem. There is I can't even find it again. I'm not even sure. It was like 10 pages deep when I was like looking through images for Sphinx, and then I just came across this one and saved it. So supposedly this was another Sphinx that was in Jerusalem, and there's a giant column, a Phoenician style, whatever you want to call it, Roman style column, singular by itself, which is weird. You usually see them in twos. And then you've got this Sphinx with like what looks like an upside down crucifix on its head. Okay, that's pretty strange. Unfortunately, we've got this big light glare or something in the middle that we can't see everything, but it appears as though it's got these. It kind of does the longer headdress style where it comes over the shoulder and then down across the chest. Its nose is broken off, which is very interesting as well. Um, why is the nose always broken off? You know, and then there's this really creepy. Well, okay, so then there's this stupa slash lingam, let's call it, in front of the Sphinx. Okay, right? Same idea, except it has a smaller, I guess we'll call it a Sphinx head on it, all black, and it's got like a weird look to it, man, like creepy. Almost looks like it has pointed ears, almost demonic looking, and then it has this one. You know what this reminds me of is like when you put an earpiece in, like if you're at a call center and you have like your telephone earpiece in. That's what this looks like to me, because he doesn't have it on the other side. But yeah, really weird. I'm guessing this no longer exists. I'm guessing that this, because I tried to find it and I could not find this anywhere else. I don't even think this is actually there anymore. They probably tore it down. This probably exposed way too much information. And this photo may be the only thing we have left. But yeah, man, look at that. That is like nightmare fuel almost right there. See the ear? How it comes to a point? Okay. Um, let's move on. So there are other Sphinx images around the world. You've got the Greek Sphinx, which had wings and is typically depicted as a female. Um, then you've got the Asian version of a Sphinx. There's many different actually Asian versions, and then this other one over here, which also is I think a Greek version. It looks like. Um, this is another one of the Asian versions right here. I can't remember from where, but it's I think it guards their temple. That's also a theme that you'll see a lot with Sphinx, is it a guarding theme that it guards, which makes a lot of sense because when you see the what looks like a lingam between the paws, that also reminds me of guarding. And then many of the legends of Sphinx are in regards to the Sphinx guarding a city. So I do believe that that's what the Sphinx in Egypt represents, is that it is a guard over the pyramid area, uh, potentially one of many. This would have been the kind of Greek version. You can see the breasts on the front, um, and then here it is, kind of like in the laying down. And then this was kind of a fashion that it was kind of in fashion for a while in the 1800s and in places like Europe and France and whatnot, to put these in front of your house and in front of your estate and that kind of a thing. Here they are again. Here you can see some of the different ones from around the world. Myanmar, Vatican City has this more Greek style, Roman style. Okay, so this image, this is from one of my old videos. This was Mount Everest, an area, and I was showing you how I do believe that this was actually manufactured at one point in time. This was all turned into stone, but that this was some kind of a structure. And I was saying, because of this evidence right here of these very uniform looking rectangular strip of what I believe, to my eye, looks like it would have been the bottom of a coat of arms decoration that would have gone over the Sphinx, over the back of the Sphinx structure, and this would have been one of its paws, and then its other paw probably over here, and it would have been very large, and then potentially between its paws a lingam of some sort. And then there was also, in one of my previous videos, I had showed you this location somewhere in North America. I don't actually even still know where, but I had shown you evidence that I believe that there were several Sphinx structures, and they would have been enormous compared to the one in Egypt. This one right here being one of them with the head of a dog, which to me would make sense as well with this theme, because dogs being very good protectors, also them having very good hearing, which is the theme we see with the headdress of the Egyptian Sphinx. No need to have an Egyptian headdress on this guy because it's already a dog. It already has awesome hearing, right? So. And then over here in the background, we had a couple more that look very much. I mean, this one right here looks a lot like a Sphinx and this almost has more of a pointed nose. So this almost would have been like a dog-faced, because that's some from the legends and mythology. The Sphinx doesn't always have to have a human face; it can have the face of a dog or other animals as well. Um, but very often it has the head of a human. That's by far the most common. And then this one could have potentially also been a Sphinx structure, as well as this one here. The paws kind of missing on this one, or being buried, and then the head being like totally destroyed, or just this being very unusual. But this one also having a face built on the front of the chest area, which, again, this may not have been a Sphinx at all. This could just be something totally different here. Still super interesting. Looks very structural to me. Okay, and then we're back to the original image, which I'll talk about just a little bit more before I just show you a couple other things before I end the video here. So back to the original image. So again, there's no longer any fingernails on the paws. Okay, they just for some reason got rid of those. And let's just imagine real quick, let's look at the scale of these people, and let's imagine that this is a real skull inside of a mask here, and then let's imagine what the stature of the giants who would have been, his body, how big would have this giant's body been? Okay, so if we imagine that this would have been standing, his head, if let's say he was standing where these paws are resting, on that surface, his head would probably be, the top of his head would be probably up around here. Now if we can imagine him standing on this surface level with where these people are, his head would be up around here. I mean, obviously he would be enormous, compared to a normal human. So now let's imagine that this giant is, and let's call him a Nephilim. I'm going to start calling them Nephilim guys because that's what they were. In previous videos I used the word Titan a lot. I'm going to stop using the word Titan because it actually, I found out, kind of harkens back to like New Age Atlantis stuff, and I'm not really down with that. I'm more into biblical, the story of biblical giants, which is what we call Nephilim giants, so which were the fallen angels and everything like that. So that's why, and also the crossbreeding here. That's also what Sphinx represents, is crossbreeding between humans and animals. So very much in line with Nephilim. And so let's imagine that this giant is here in the background where these tiny little people are next to the pyramid. So his stature would have been roughly, let's say the top of his head would have been right here in the background. So, he would have been, like, let's say 30, 40 times taller than these people. Or, let's say at least 20 times taller. And so it's now easy to see who built the pyramids when you see that people were that large. You can easily see how a human that's that large could build these pyramids without nearly as much trouble as it would take all of us normal little people. Also, the other thing that's important that I would like to point out about this image is I like how this shows how the pyramids used to be smooth. For some reason, that's just important to me because pyramids are kind of, sometimes when we see the Great Pyramid, we always think of how it's in blocks, but that's just how it's crumbled away. When it was all finished and done and brand new, it was smooth. It was totally smooth, these pyramids. And I definitely do believe that these were part of energy generation for sure. Now that we've confirmed etheric energy as being very real, I'm positive that that's what these pyramids were involved in. Okay, and then before we end the video, I just want to show you a few other images that are related. And so the lingam was the one I was going to talk about with what's called the Naga lingam. Very much reminds me of Sphinx because we saw this Sphinx lingam between the paws, and it showed the protection of the lingam, and that's what this Naga lingam is also doing. It's protecting the lingam, as well as the snake imagery itself. Reminds us of that headdress with the cobra snake ears, basically. So a lot of similarities there, little more than to be coincidence, I think. And also what I will mention about snake imagery, reptilian imagery in general, is that it is probably related to Satan, the devil, that old serpent, the devil. I know that a lot of religions nowadays want to say that this was all just like fine and dandy, but like all of this Naga worship, I mean, it's not necessarily worship, but this the idea that Nagas were good guys or that reptilians were good guys at all is, I think, completely wrong. I don't think that they were. I don't think that you want to be seeing them as the good guys. This is like in Sydney, Australia. This guy just built this, obviously some kind of Freemason or something. I believe he dedicated it to World War I, and has kind of a very Naga-looking face. That's also something that I'm kind of tying in with this Sphinx, is that I definitely get this kind of Naga feeling with it. And this guy, this isn't, I'm not saying this is a mud fossil or anything like that. I'm just saying, you know, he did get it right with the length of the headdress here. He didn't do the curve on it, which is weird. He does just like this flat thing, and then somebody broke off this other side here. But and then he says on here, lest we forget. I guess he's talking about World War I. But this is an area in Pakistan, and some people believe that this was a Sphinx at one time, and I'm not so sure about that, and I'll show you why. But I will say from afar that it very much does have Sphinx imagery. I will say that I do believe this site was a building at one time, and there is a mountain of evidence to support that. I could probably do a whole video on this one, but there is certainly a lot of evidence that this was in fact a building. But the reason I don't think that this was necessarily a Sphinx is that I'm seeing columns here where its chest would be, and that's just not something you normally see on Sphinxes. I believe this may have been like a very grand type looking cathedral, like what we see in, you know, Seville, Spain, or Notre Dame, or those types of things, where you've got columns, domes, stupas, and just the works. And then this was just totally destroyed. Here's another. This is a pretty good picture of it because it. Just kind of gives us a nice bright image, and you can see just these very straight lines everywhere, and just what look like columns, and you know, it just has a very much a structural element to it, and you just don't see any sort of a face or anything. And so again, that's why. But I do see evidence of what looks like columns and things. So just thought I'd throw that one in there because, again, from afar, you know, it definitely does kind of give you that idea of a Sphinx. This is a mask that, if you watch Wise Up, he talks about how he believes this mask is just more of a modern day deception, and I believe he might be onto something because when you see this version of the Egyptian pharaoh mask, this would be King Tut's mask. They show this Sphinx type headdress, But then they show it going over the shoulder, and then as we saw in the original old photos, the headdress never went below the chin. So that might be a deception right there, as well as the goatee imagery. That seems to be added, and then the atop the head, on this one they have it looks like birds and or snake imagery, but we don't know if that's what was on top of the Sphinx's head either. Like I said, it's never been shown. Even in the old photos, it was already missing. So, um, yeah, and then just another one of those that place in Pakistan. So, um, anyways, guys, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like, subscribe, and keep tuned for more videos. I hope you found this one interesting. Please let me know in the comments if you've been liking my videos. If not, I will be going back to some of the videos where I find anomalies, more, let's call it dimensional sight type videos. But I've just been, I go down these different trains of thought and rabbit holes sometimes, and I hope you guys will just stick with me, and hope you're learning and having fun, and see you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.